Now we've been speaking a lot about mediation, the topic of the last subdivision here today. Listening to your presentations, I came to think about that yesterday. Elin and I, we were talking, and you told me that you had this guy who turned up at your performances who said, "I don't understand anything. This is wonderful. Thank you so much." and I think this is sort of like paradise or utopia for most of us who work in our institutions. But also thinking about what you said today, Ben, something that I think very much about, and also touched upon it earlier, how so much of what we do is about language and how we sort of negotiate our positions and mediate through language. And you were speaking a lot about the role of text, Ben. And I think that many of us, including myself, we have this sort of love-hate relationship to the wall of text and explanations in space. Because on one hand, I think, just speaking for myself personally, I very often just dream of our audience coming in here and then intuitively, approaching the artwork and trusting their own senses and trusting that whatever they think about the works, it's good enough and empower them and so on. But on the other hand, I'm also so much aware of that we have created a culture that unless you have a wall text, you make people feel stupid. So it's also, I think I would very much be curious to hear sort of your take on how do we work with text and with the language within our institutions, with what we do in a way that empowers people instead of belittling them or reducing them to sort of people that we as art institutions need to educate in order to understand what we do.
Yeah, that's a super difficult topic. We just had a meeting last week in our museum talking about the text that we personally don't like, the text that we create. Also in terms of time, and we started also to ask a writer to write about it. And so you really have to make many experiments. I was in Hygiene Museum this year in the exhibition Freundschaft, Friendship. And this museum makes many experiments with education approach, and you were asked as a visitor to answer several questions, and then you were somehow put in a generator, and then there were kind of 5 types coming out, and you got like a bracelet, and then you went through the exhibition, and there were iPods everywhere, iPads, and you got your text, your individual text. So it was another language for everybody who went in. Or in Leipzig, I was in a show where they used simple language. So as a second effort to address other people, yeah. Or at Palais de Monet in this year in Paris, I was in a Marcel Brota's exhibition. They had a little booklet for children with text, simple text, and for adults. And I, of course, took the children's texts, yeah, because it was really great, yeah, to have this access. And I think empowerment is one of the best words of this panel. I could, if you give me your email address, I can send you another cartoon from Sampi.
Oh, yeah.
I used it some years ago also, talking about mediation. A guy, you see a guy in his basement, and in the background there is the bottle dryer. I mean, his bottle dryer, like in the cellar somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then in the next pictures, he's going out, and then he goes to La Maison de la Culture, and he goes in, and then there is the same bottle dryer, yeah, on a stage. So, and then you see him walking out of the museum, and then you see like 10 sequences, him sitting in his sofa, actually at home, thinking. And I think that's kind of the addition to the cartoon that you showed.
Yeah, that's great.
Because it makes something, yeah? I mean, and to pose questions is also, I think, something that you can really work with audience, yeah? So what does this have to do with myself? So I would, for example, not agree that with the piece with the portraits, I saw it too at Arsenale, people are completely lost. Yeah, I don't think so, because it was kind of like a carpet from, I don't know, you could immediately have so many associations, and you actually don't need art historian text about what's the idea and blah blah blah. And I think to give them more freedom, just to that's it. It has something to do with time, and to take the audience really serious, and to know, as we all agree, there's not only one-dimensional interpretation through the text, and that's so difficult. I think. So. Long statement, but very important.
Yeah, absolutely, and no, I totally agree. And in fact, one thing I was going to show, but it's not related to contemporary art, so I didn't show it, but was the best example of wall labels, and it kind of addresses what you said, for me at least, was the Boymans Museum in Rotterdam, which has got the most fantastic wall texts that I've read. And on the wall text, it's kind of what you're saying. They are empowering in the sense that they ask questions. They don't shut things down. You know, they open it up and they give you a little bit of information, but not that one. I'm talking about actually just about the Dutch Golden Age collection, not necessarily the contemporary collection, but these very open ideas, all of which are suggestive. You know, that they say perhaps. Is that me? No, I haven't got a car for it. Actually, I haven't got a car. But anyway, no, that's just kind of. But you're completely right. I mean, my point with the Ataman thing is that that was a commissioned portrait of a Turkish philanthropist. Like it kind of, listen, I completely agree with you. Other than that piece of information is quite useful to know because it kind of gives a certain kind of context. But I'm not suggesting any kind of text or interpretation says this is what this work is about. I'm suggesting that mediation provides a kind of point of access to the intellectual world, the intellectual cloud from which this kind of work emerges, which is always open and always questioning, I suppose. Shall I hand over? Do you want to say something?
Yeah. No, I'm coughing. I was thinking about text. We have that as an obstacle, of course, but what I think sometimes when it gets too theatrical, not theatrical, what do you mean, theoretic, and that it feels like the curator and the art institution have thought about so many clever sentences, so the actual art piece is gone.
Yeah.
And I think that's the in-between land. How can we present it without being like populist or entertainment, but it also to give something away? Because nowadays I see when we also have press shows, and we have worked so long with our press releases, we see that not even the one from the media had read it, and it said, okay, I have it here, but tell me what it is about. Is it strange? I worked with this fucking press release and it's so simple. It's like you go into a bloody fairy tale or something to create a feeling, and then you can have. So for us, it's very much to find like 4 or 5 lines that actually describe the feeling that can be open for interpretation, and then you can hang on the artist. But also thinking of the abstraction with the art museum for kids, when Lou wrote this text on the wall, and Laura was sitting in Sao Paulo and was like, I could never think about this, and he wrote like, I have choose abstract paintings because you're free to think whatever you want. And I have gathered them in groups. I call them blue, red, white, all just to make it more simple for me to see it. And then he had much more. And it was so beautiful, the way of like, you are free actually to think whatever you want to think. And I think also it's a problem that art always puts themselves higher than the audience and think that the audience doesn't understand, because that's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think also in media, they should stop asking why art is strange. When we have literature, poetry, film, theater, football, baseball, politics for ages. I get provoked.
Something slightly different, but which I've also been thinking about hearing your presentations and also several of the other presentations that we've heard today, so maybe it's just a question for everyone. There's been a lot of talk about this concept of nebulous identities and how or whether this trying to escape having a fixed identity as an institution can somehow be liberating for us and can somehow empower us as institutions as far as approaching new audiences go. I think you, with Little Performance Studio, are a great example of, I think most people I speak with about you always say, oh, no, they're visuals, no, they're theatre, no, they're performance. And I think that's a really fantastic position to have, and you, Ben Wall, to talking about it with Sluice, what is that really? But just to play the devil's advocate for a second, do the audience really care about our identities? If you understand what I mean? Perhaps are we more concerned with, oh, we're a museum, we're a gallery, we're a Kunsthalle? I'm not really sure whether our audiences care. We've had a good example here in Copenhagen recently where within the visual arts scene here in Copenhagen, there was a lot of outcry about that the municipality chose to give a very large chunk of their arts funding for an art fair here in Copenhagen, where they ditched most of the non-profit projects, most of the museum projects, and gave it directly to the art fair because they thought it was a better and more democratic art experience for average people here in Copenhagen. And I think for many of us it was, I don't know whether it was a wake-up call, but at least it got us thinking about, yeah, well, whatever, maybe we are only the ones in the institutions, maybe we are the ones who are obsessed about whether it's an art fair or a gallery or whatever it is. Maybe the audience doesn't care, really. So I'd just be curious to hear about this. Well, it's very nice and fine that we speak about nebulous identities, but do you think that thinking about this is also something that our audiences really care about?
I guess I could say something.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I won't say much because I totally accept the premise of your question. I mean, I think that, I don't think audiences do really care. Not especially. I mean, it's not something that we come up against in Sluice. Nobody comes in thinking they're in the National Gallery. But at the same time, this could be a commercial art fair, this could be something, it doesn't really matter. No, for us, very specifically, it's something to do with funding. No, it's to do with press, actually. It's to do with how you're defined, in terms of that. But apart from that doesn't really make any difference at all, I don't think, to me at least. Did you want to?
Yeah, for us in one way it does, because if we would say that we were a theatre, people also expect that they enter theatre and in an agreed circumstances what the theatre is, in the same way as you go to the cinema. You know exactly, you buy the popcorn there, you hang your coat there, you put this, and then you sit in the darkness and you see the film. So it's just about how you read the thing. And also because we are in this borderland, as are they theatre or performance, and for us it's very important to state is visual art performance, because the sender is not theatre, it's not an actor who done the piece, it's actually a visual artist's mind that created it. So these old ladies that goes to the Natural Theatre cannot hang their fur coats in our wardrobe because they go into another setting. And that's also very important also for them to know this is not a big art institution. And of course they know it because it's in Säve in Malmö. So in one way, for some audience, I think it can be important to know, because some hates theatre, they never go to theatre, or they hate art, they never go to art. And the whole intention with Lilith was also for me, how can we get an audience to come from different groups? Because if you do an art event, it only comes art crowd. If you do theatre, you only do theatre, or dance, you only have dance crowd. And I have a background also as a producer for Malmö Festival, a big culture stage, and we did different performances, and then was the sender in opera, or an experimental performance from Belgium or something. And it was interesting to see the way the audience walked. Then it was like, boom, the tent filled with one audience group, and then boom, and then another one, and boom. And that was actually one of the cores of really, how do I join them?
In our case, sometimes it's really difficult to answer this question, yeah? That people come ask, still we will always be this institution for contemporary art. In Germany especially, sometimes we have a problem that we are called Galerie für zeitgenössische Kunst, which makes some people think that we are commercial gallery. Yeah? So that was kind of a bit of a mistake, maybe, but it doesn't matter, yeah. And people come from different angles, and our mediation department works in long-term projects with schools and communities, and sometimes they just come to do these workshops, to go there. Maybe sometimes even independently from what we show in our gallery, yeah. So they know it from a completely different angle, or people that come to the hotel or cafe, what I was talking about before. So it's good. I mean, if they get more of what they just come for, and if they have the glance, okay, there's something else hanging behind that, or next time maybe I take a little time and look at that, or then it's kind of successful.
Can I just, this is not quite answering the question, but I just thought of this, because we've been mentioning this idea about expectations of our audience, or whatever, how we define the public, or whatever, how we define them. I think that one of the things that comes up time and time again is that it's said by institutions looking to justify mediation projects, it's said sometimes people feel intimidated by going into contemporary art galleries, and they don't necessarily. Like, time and again, I don't find that people are intimidated by museums and galleries. Expectations are often also made of children, all the time with children. Oh, children, intimidated by it. They're not. Not really. So I think that's quite a sort of crucial thing, to not have this expectation that people are frightened, or that they're intimidated. Far from it, actually. Quite often it's the reverse, I find.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you show. It depends on who is sitting at the front desk. Yeah, absolutely. Who is? It depends on what. I think really also what an architecture makes with you. Yeah, if you feel like this, you have to open a door which is here. Yeah. So it of course makes something with you. And if you play with this and put it down and have one-to-one direction, so that people sometimes are really quite astonished, how close the art piece is to their daily life. One of the best mediation tools is daily newspaper. In our this year, the annual program, I wasn't talking about, but it was very successful. Just to get the link.
I was thinking, can I say one more thing? Because we're talking about this thing about going into galleries. I mean, I go to commercial galleries now. So I go to quite a lot of commercial galleries because I teach courses where I take people to them and to see new shows. And for me, the experience of going to a commercial gallery is often, I have to admit, intimidating. So I go in and you see the top of a head, the top of the head of a beautiful girl behind a desk. And that head does not, the head registers that I'm not going to buy anything before I even get in the door, so they don't look up. And so, and I know it's a cliche really of contemporary, but that's really, really true. What I think is that, I don't think people are necessarily intimidated to go into these places, they just don't know about them. I mean, I just think that happens all the time. People say, I didn't know you could go into these places. Yeah, you can. I'm talking about London, which is obviously a centre of contemporary art. So, all these galleries, free exhibitions, fantastic stuff going on, but not given to exist as a public institution. However, in a sense, they kind of are, in a way.
I'm very curious, maybe tapping paradoxically into what Dave was saying. Like, I
work in a national... Oh, God. I work in a national context where this idea of empowering the audience has reached degrees of perversion, where you think that, or at least in Dutch institutions, information seems to be something that you cannot distribute as an audience. One anecdote is that the director of the Rijksmuseum in Paris keeps on insisting that you should not explain to an audience what a repoussoir is, like a dark object in front of a painting that pushes back, creates perspective, because people cannot handle that. So you have to just allow them access to their personal experience and withhold information. And I wonder how the panel thinks of that, because this idea of the emancipated spectator can also become perverse, that you don't do what you're also supposed to do as an institution, is that you are a center of excellence. You also give people handles, information, background.
Yeah, I told them, okay, they don't want to work anymore.
They're on strike.
That's the end of the discussion.
Okay.
I mean, I totally follow you, and this is really, I can't imagine that we, for example, as an institution would do that. Yeah, that's arrogant too. Ideally, you offer various accesses. It depends so much on what you show. And it can't be always the text. Maybe it can't be always the text by the curator. Yeah? I guess I'm not the best writer about my exhibition, especially before the opening. I always say, I have to write the next text, like in 2 weeks when I went through the exhibition. That's also a good topic, talking about mediation. You install something as a curator, and then how often do you go into the exhibition? You go there like for special guided tours with special people, but you don't necessarily do the public tours. Yeah, so that's why it's so important to talk with the mediation team, which is on in the exhibition. First of all, it's super important that they are open and that they go to the people. And I'm a big fan of also guided tours. And yes, and sometimes text is not very good, but I'm a big fan of experimental ways. Yeah, and I think you fail, like you said, also examples about it in some cases. I, for example, installed 10 years ago a mediation card, and it had 5 points on it. It was next to an exhibition dealing with the perception of art as an artistic outcome, yeah? Like with Alan Sekula and Evelyn Richter and Thilo Schulz, so some others, and all dealing with this, what's happening in front of the painting or artwork. Like there's this wonderful work from Alan Sekula, this Gallery Voices montage that he taped what people say about white canvas paintings, and so it's so interesting, yeah. And you are standing in front of this piece, and so I tried to put the people into having a break. Take one piece and stand in front of it. I think you shouldn't have this kind of idea that they should all understand everything. Yeah, I never do. I go in exhibitions, and I'm happy to see the Armenisch pavilion in Venice. That was my highlight, and maybe some other smaller ones too. Mm-hmm. But of course, I also went out and had so many questions, and sometimes I was also bored. So it's.
On similar lines, I just want to mention a little program which was at the National Gallery in London, which is, again, it's about old master painting, but it's just a really lovely program which was put on one evening, and it was, in a sense, in traditional sense, completely unmediated, but actually mediated. So it was called Looking Without Talking, So I shouldn't be promoting programs like this because they put me out of a job. But anyway, in the gallery, one room, each person participating went into the room on their own, and they had 10 minutes, I think, in front of a single painting, which was lit, like just lit. All the rest of the room was dark, and this was with Dutch 17th century painting, and they had no mediation. And they couldn't really see the wall label, so they just sat in front of it for 10 minutes. And I would say that that person, sitting in front of one painting for 10 minutes, probably had as deep, if not deeper, a relationship with that object than someone on a guided tour, or somebody reading a text. I just think it's also about time, you know. With this whole thing about, we're talking about hospitality, we're talking about creating the right environment. I mean, it's so that somebody can do that. It's so that somebody can just sit with a piece, and that could be with contemporary art too, definitely, couldn't it?
No.
No. No, do you disagree, or you just don't want to talk? No.
It was the same.
It was the same.
And I'm not the right institution, so no.
You are.
Speak for yourself.
Right.
I think we have
Some more questions?
All right.
Just a simple question. Is it possible for an artist to be known or acknowledged without having theory or big CVs? Or is it a part of the scene that you have big thoughts about and big theories about your work, or does this painting itself qualifies?
Who wants it? Do you want to take it? Are you going to do it? Is it?
Actually, yeah, you should answer too. You want to me first?
Okay, you go first.
My immediate answer would be, of course, you don't need this theory behind. I'm actually also not a person so much connected to theory and art history. I didn't study it. I see it sometimes. There's a gap. I lack of some knowledge, but that also gives me the opportunity to have another access sometimes. And in terms of mediation, no, I mean, it depends on, I mean, there are so many visitors maybe that need it in the inner circle, yeah, to mediate it through theory and to prove it and to put it in a certain drawer or something. But I think to work with like diverse audiences, you can have tons of accesses. Yeah. You need time and openness. Yeah, I mean that's kind of, you have to be open to address an artwork.
Yeah, I would only second that. I think I totally agree with you. I mean, I think there's a kind of second question which is about making it as an artist, right? This is a career question, which I don't think I could answer really. I mean, I think within certain institutional structures, you probably do have to present an intellectual framework for what you're doing, but in order to engage with the work of art, you don't necessarily need that.
No, but the artists, I mean, many artists that I know, I mean, they don't have this grit of theory, like personally. I mean, of course, they maybe are put into something and they can see themselves in it, and it's sometimes great, but I know many that don't need it, not at all.
I say also for us, we don't care about it at all. If it's like a super long CV or theory or a very great thought about the art piece. So, and it can be either way. It can be one who has a great CV or a great theory behind it, but it's something with the energy that is the art, that the artist deliver. If that connects with me physically, then this person is in. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Is this the one that...
That's right.
Hello, it's working. Yeah, I wanted to go back to this question of empowerment, and it seems to me that what what's happened is that there was a kind of there was a very progressive tradition of thinking differently about pedagogy, so that we, instead of, you know, standing in front of a class of people and, you know, trying to speak the truth to them, that you maybe try to work with them differently, and that was based on ideas of empowerment. But what's happened to that, I think, is that it's become really confused with the concept of entitlement. So instead of, you're not actually empowering anyone by saying that they are entitled to something already. And so what's got lost, what's now missing from these new kind of pedagogical practices, is any sense of empowerment as a form of exchange, or a gift even, you know, as something that you might give to someone that they don't already have. So, and this is where Rancière's wrong, it seems to me, is that he says that we're already emancipated, or we're already empowered, and it's like, that's not what empowered means. Empowered means transformative activity, and but if it's transformative activity, then you do it together. That's the difference. It's not that I will transform you because that's my job, or you will transform yourself, don't come to me. Transformative together, and so empowerment becomes perverted, it seems to me, when we stop empowering people.
Is behind you there is someone who wants to say something?
Hi, I think it's more or less continuing on the same point you just made, but there is a certain challenge in that you have to consider current cultural politics in general and the matter of funding, which you brought up. If you think of a large-scale institution such as, I can only speak for London, maybe that, as the Tate Modern, which may be slightly critical for a moment, they come up with exceptional exhibitions that are actually rather sloppily curated. And the impression I get when I compare it to, for example, the Beaubourg in Paris, is that in France there seems to be a mentality that it's okay to challenge the public. You're inviting them in, and you're telling them, well, okay, just do a bit of homework. Actually work at perceiving things, and this is not perceived as challenging or intimidating. It's about empowerment, as yes, you can come in, and you can look at this, and you can do some work in front of it and create a role. Whereas, and I personally think it must be a question of funding. In the UK at least, particularly, I noticed that there seems to be this tendency towards making everything very, oh, let's not frighten it, let's not be elitist. I'm sorry, the very concept of art is in itself elitist, in that you think you've got something to give to others. So I think there shouldn't be a fear of elitism in that sense. There shouldn't be a fear of being difficult. As Julia pointed out, she doesn't get everything when she goes to it. It's not important. What you get is what you get. But then it's a question of who's going to give money for that. And I'm thinking specifically of the BBC, which is now suffering a crisis because they've got the license fee that you have to pay, and they're doing that should allow them to do more complex and more challenging programming, but they're also trying to do strictly come dancing and things like that, which you understand why they feel pressure to compete, but it shouldn't really be the case. I don't know if what I said is very coherent, because it's a lot of stuff going on, but yeah.
It is. Can I just answer? No, I don't want to answer, I just want to address it. I think you make a great point. And it is, speaking strictly for the UK, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that, certain funding bodies, will box tick when it comes to what they consider to be works of art that engage the public. The problem is that you can't ever generalise about what works of art are going to engage the public and how. Or you can't generalise about any kind of mediation at all, I think. So I completely agree with you there. And I also agree with your thing about an elite activity. I mean, it isn't the same, contemporary art, fine art, is not the same as Hollywood blockbusters, and it shouldn't be treated as the same. It's a misunderstanding to treat that as the same, isn't it? It's not, Anyway, sorry, I'm basically just saying I agree with you.
Yeah, well, that term blockbuster exhibition seems to be absurd to me.
The idea of a blockbuster exhibition is absurd to you.
Yeah, it seems slightly absurd to me, to be honest. Actually aiming at a blockbuster exhibition.
Oh, yeah, to even use the phrase, yeah, absolutely.
Because you're going to have to go for the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, exactly.